Keys to the Commonwealth, a podcast where we share the real stories of local community members who are using real estate to build personal wealth, along with tips and tricks from professionals across the industry. And now, your host, Landry Fields.
Welcome back to the Keys to the Commonwealth podcast. This is Landry Fields. I'm excited to have everybody back with us today. Today's guest is a long time in the making, as we go way back to high school, where he was my starting point guard for our basketball team. That's not the important part, though, and why he's on the show today. He is the owner of the Opportunity Zone Consulting Group and a real estate investing partner with Revitalex. He currently has 18 years of experience owning rental property and is one of the men that got me interested in purchasing real estate to begin with and the opportunities it presents. He was raised right here in Lexington, received his degree from the University of Kentucky and law degree from Harvard University. He is married to his wonderful bride, Audrey, and together they have 4 awesome kids, Dylan, Austin, Chloe, and their brand new addition, baby Chase. His notable achievements, he says, includes winning the All-Europe Army Flag Football Championship while playing on a fully torn ACL. And it's my honor today to welcome Scott McIntosh to the Keys to the Commonwealth studio. Scott, sir, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Landry. It's great to be here with you. I've really enjoyed listening to your podcast, following the folks you've had on here before. It's been a great lineup, and I'm excited about our conversation today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's been a learning experience, and I thought what better way to help others learn along the way, and inviting people onto the show as well that I know are passionate about helping others learn about some of this stuff too. It's been great. So
yeah, and I love local focus.
Yeah,
the local focus.
Focus on it.
I'm a big fan of bigger pockets and enjoy that, and it's fun to hear what people are doing around the country. But it's also been really fascinating to hear just the diversity of experience and perspectives and approaches that people are taking here in Lexington. So you're adding a lot of value in that space.
We start every episode off with jump back in the DeLorean and, tell me, how did you get into real estate to begin with? What was the kind of draw to it and so forth?
Yeah, so you mentioned us playing basketball together. You said high school. I always think people get confused when we say high school. I didn't actually go to high school. You and I were homeschooled.
Okay, we were homeschooled. Okay, I'm going to admit that.
It was kindergarten through 12th grade, so, prom with our mom in the kitchen sort of thing. But that provided a lot of opportunities, too. I think both of us were engaged in kind of some business ventures early on, in the lawn care field. And so myself and a brother and some friends, mowed yards throughout high school and continued that through college. And as my dad was talking to me about just kind of other ways to invest the income we had from the lawn mowing business. Rental property was something that he kept encouraging me to keep an eye on. And so
the wise wisdom of not going and spending it on paintball guns or who knows what in high school.
Exactly. Yeah. He knew if I didn't have somewhere I was excited to put it, that's probably where it would go, that or new Lego sets. And so
there's an argument to be made with Lego sets as far as an investment though, but that's a topic for another day.
Fair enough. Well, we'll have to schedule something for that. Get Matt Veed to join us.
There you go.
Like he'd have an opinion on that. But just down the street from where I grew up, on Penmoken Park, I saw a sign for sale by auction. And so Dad and I drove by it.
Okay.
And, the auction was coming around the corner. The property looked like it needed quite a bit of work. And so we thought maybe at that point, it was 2004, it might go at a decent price.
Yeah.
And so planned to go to the auction, kind of prayed a lot about it beforehand, that if this was the right property, if things would work out, and settled on a number. $100,000 was what we felt like would be reasonable to pay for it. And
sure.
Just prayed, hey, it's an auction. If we can get it for under $100K, that probably means it's the right property for us. If not, then we'll pass, and God must have something else in mind.
And now a little bit different take is that, I know your family and fathers like that. A lot of people come from backgrounds where they had family in investing in property already, and that's not the case in this scenario, right?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, my dad did end up doing some rental property investing kind of alongside me, but
sure.
He's a financial planner, financial advisor, helped people making smart financial decisions, but typically more focused on kind of traditional equity investments in the stock market. Sure. But he's always been clear that, hey, you want to be an owner, and whether it's owning stock, whether it's owning real estate, whether it's owning your own business, those are the sorts of things that are going to allow you to have kind of some freedom, some financial independence long term, and so real estate fit into that.
So to that point, this was pre-YouTube days as well. I don't know if you had to go to the library to figure out, investing. There's so many resources to figure out investing now as far as real estate that they were definitely not near as many as they are now. You figured it all out on yourself, basically, right?
I had a lot of friends who helped me through the first process, but you're right. Yeah, there wasn't the same kind of glut of information available. But I got a traffic ticket like the week before this auction. I was going too fast on Harrisburg Road, heading down to Lake Harrington, and had to be in court the morning of the auction. So I missed it. But Dad agreed to go and bid, on my behalf. And, again, we kind of had that 100,000 number we'd prayed about. So he goes and he bids, and he bids at 91,000, somebody else at 92, 93, 94, and he ends up bidding 99,000. Somebody bids 100,000. There's nobody else going to bid, but 100,000 was our number, and the next one he'd have to go to is 101. That was too much. We prayed 100,000 was the cap, and so auction closes. He lets me know, "Hey Scott, hope things are good in traffic court. We didn't get the house, but there'll be another one." He calls me back about 20 minutes later, and he's like, "All right, kind of crazy, but the guy with the $100,000 bid backed out. Like his brother was going to do the deal with him." Said, I'm out, I'm not doing it. And so the auctioneers come to us and asked if we want to take it at $100,000. And I said, hey, that's what we've been praying about. So it must be meant to be. So we did, bought that house for $100,000 on Penmoken Park. Okay. Spent the summer recruiting all of my friends to come get free pizza and help me repaint it or refinish the floors. Or it was a lot of kind of DIY stuff. We had a couple handymen that we'd found that I hired to help with doing some things I didn't quite know how to do.
Right.
Put a lot of sweat equity in that and kind of learning how it works.
You still have the property?
We sold it 3 years ago when we were moving back to Lexington. It helped fund buying the house that we're living in now. So when we had it, 14 or 15 years. Great.
So how did you finance the deal on that one? I always kind of ask.
Man, back then financing was crazy. You just had to provide a letter from your CPA saying you were self-employed, and we got 100% financing on the property.
Just have a CPA. So your cousin could be a CPA and be like, yo, just write me a letter.
Scott's got a lawnmower business. So we got 100% financing on the property. And then I paid for the renovations we did, about $20K or so, and the renovations out of pocket. And then we refinanced it afterward and got all that money back out based on the new appraisal. So, different world as far as how banking worked back then, but was pretty fortuitous in that first one.
That is great. So now, as far as I know, let's start with the Revitalex. We'll kind of do this in two batches here. So Revitalex, talk to me a little bit about what you all do with that, what you all kind of learned as far as building wealth through real estate, and kind of what the focus of Revitalex is.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, Revitalex is a real estate investing company that myself, my wife Audrey, and then our partners Chris and Sarah Sheets own together. Chris and Sarah have been longtime friends from back in University of Kentucky days. Chris and I, fraternity brothers, and in each other's weddings, or godparents to our oldest son Dylan. So we've got a friendship that goes deep, and that's one part of the partnership that's really fun, is just getting to do business with people you really enjoy. And so because
the partnership can be key, but it has to be the right partnership for sure. Right.
I've got to deal with people in kind of a broad spectrum of partnerships, both good and bad, in my work in the opportunity zone space, and have seen how great it can be when it works well. And we feel really thankful that that's the sort of partnership we've got with Chris and Sarah. But we started Revitalex as an official business in 2016. Kind of conceived the name, this connotation of being a part of revitalizing Lexington, wanting to find some properties that needed some new life breathed into them, and hoping we can be a part of that process here in central Kentucky. We'd done a couple of kind of little flips with Chris and Sarah before we formally conceived the company, but that's, I guess, about 6 years old though in its current form. And so we focus largely on single family homes, exclusively in Lexington, and again looking for things that we can kind of breathe some new life into, properties that have been a bit worn out, and that we can do a value add renovation and then provide hopefully a really nice rental home for a family or young couple or young professionals that are going to be there.
Does that become harder a little bit, kind of obviously post-COVID, as far as the single-family model? Obviously, there's benefits to being able to kind of sell it to the people who rent it if you wanted to. There's more people that want to buy a single-family because obviously they would, some typical living scenarios versus somebody that's wanting to invest in a multifamily. So what's that kind of looked like recently? I
mean, our experience is that COVID's been really good for the single-family rental market. People who were in an apartment are now working from home or spending more time at home, and all of a sudden, their space at home matters more to them. And so the attraction of having their own yard, a front porch, a space that they can call their own, an extra bedroom that can be that home office, has grown dramatically. And so we've seen, the single-family market benefit in a lot of ways from those trends. Finding deals looks different in COVID, and the definition of deal looks different in COVID. Obviously supply chain things have been challenging at different points, but we've been blessed to have a really good, trusted group of contractors who have prioritized our projects and help us with being able to continue to execute on our strategy during this period.
Finding deals has become a much more of a even more key as far as relationships with people, I think, right? As opposed to you could just, back in the day, just look up Zillow or something like that and find something. And you're like, oh, this is a good deal. Let's do that. It's not that way anymore, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. We've developed a network of kind of 4 or 5 folks that we regularly buy from, a couple businesses, some wholesalers, some other realtors that Chris has relationships with, and trying to be somebody that's easy to do business with.
Sure.
Has been a big part of kind of our business plan on the acquisition side, and I think has helped people with, after they bring us a deal, find, hey, these guys are going to follow through, close when they say they will, make the deal pretty seamless. We found those same people bringing other deals back to us, and so I think that's been an effective part of our strategy.
So strictly single-family homes right now, right?
That's right, yeah. We owned a duplex or 2 along the way, but have sold those. We used to have some townhomes. We sold those.
Okay.
It's only single families.
So what's the portfolio kind of look like right now for you?
Yeah, I mean, it almost all the houses look the same. They're kind of 3-bed, 2-bath, between 1,200 and 1,500 square feet.
So you got
relatively
just a model
recent
and
construction.
Rinse and repeat, as they say.
Yeah, kind of late 90s, early 2000s, something that's got a good, kind of efficient, open floor plan that's attractive to people, but that, again, needs some love, that we can do some updates on, bring it up to current condition, and kind of try to be at the top of the market in terms of what's available in the single-family home space. And that's allowed us to attract, some really quality tenants. And, I think we've seen that finding a great tenant is as important, maybe more important, than finding the right property. I mean, we can take a really rough property and make it look nice.
Sure.
But if we get the wrong tenant in a property, they can undo the work that we've done to make it nice really quickly.
Talk to me about some of the ways you kind of develop those relationships with, that I think it's something that people don't think about, or probably until the hindsight, or they've gotten burned on, having a tenant that was a pretty poor tenant in some ways. So talk to me about how you guys kind of nurture those relationships and so forth.
Yeah, so I think it starts with how we manage the properties. There have been different times.
So you all self-manage, right?
We do. We self-manage, but we've been in this partnership for years, and Audrey and I have only been back in Lexington since late 2018. So early in the kind of Revitalex days, we had a property manager who was involved, and Chris and Sarah were doing a lot more of the heavy lifting on that day-to-day work too. And so property managers have their benefits and their place, and but part of kind of our strategy in moving back to Lexington was having the kind of capacity and creating some time and space in kind of my own work plan to be able to manage the properties. And so that self-management has been key, because we do get to interface directly with the people applying to rent our properties, and then maintain those relationships with the people that we extend a leasing offer to over what we hope is a 5 or 8 or 10 year kind of lease period with us. And so obviously some people move to different areas or choose to be able to buy a house at some point, but we want people to do those things when that's right for them. But we don't want anybody to leave our home because they felt like it wasn't being managed well, we weren't taking care of the property. And so we try to provide a really nice home for folks, and then maintain a relationship with them that makes them feel really good about being there. And so on the front end, it just starts by being really diligent on in the application process. We found that references are kind of the piece of the application process that give us the most insight into whether somebody's the right fit for us on the tenant front. So we reach out to
both work and personal.
We reach out to their current employer and the current landlord. Sometimes go back to a past employer, past landlord too. If it's somebody who owned their own home, doesn't have a landlord reference, we'll reach out to a personal friend or connection that they'll also share, and just find out, hey, they're the sort of person that communicates well, that's responsible, that'll let us know if there's an issue and work with us on getting it resolved, that takes their responsibility seriously in terms of paying the rent and helping to maintain the property. And so those references.
And I'm sure that went a long way during the COVID scenario, where obviously the moratorium that caused a lot of fear, a lot of headache from certain people. Do you guys have a lot of issues with that, or was the idea of having those good relationships I'm sure benefited that, right?
Yeah, it did. We built good relationships with our tenants going into that, and we tried to be proactive on the front end of COVID, letting people know, hey, we don't know how long this pandemic's going to last or how it's going to impact us, and it's going to impact everybody a little bit differently, but we're committed to working with you through this pandemic and trying to make sure that you remain secure in your home, and just ask for them to kind of keep us updated. Hey, if this impacts your financial circumstances, if you have a job loss or a family change, during the pandemic, keep us informed on that.
Can't help you if you're not telling us how we can help you.
Yeah, so we know we can help them. So we had some tenants who, needed some help spreading the rental payments out, pay half on the 1st and half on the 15th to get through some kind of financial crunch. We were accommodating on that. We had a few tenants who took us up on the offer to kind of reduce their rent for a period of a couple months. That helped people through kind of some early stages, some bumps in the road. And then we've had a number of tenants who were hit a little harder by COVID. And so the city's rental assistance program was a little bit challenging to navigate for some people, and it took a while for the funds to start being dispersed. Yeah. But we tried to be patient with our tenants to help them with navigating some of that, red tape or bureaucracy, getting connected with people in that program who could really help with, kind of getting their application through to completion. And so we found some ways to assist people in that way too. But yeah, back to the relationship, knowing that that we were there for them and hopefully being someone that they could trust was a piece that mattered.
I mean, the old adage of treating people the way you would want to be treated. I mean, it doesn't get more basic and than that, as well as also be one of the most important tools as far as to live by in business and in life in general. So
yeah,
that's
awesome. Agree more. Yeah,
I know. So you got the Opportunity Zone group, consulting group on the as well, and I know there's a lot of questions with that, with most people honestly not really understanding it, knowing what it is exactly, what are the benefits of it, how to kind of navigate it, because obviously you can't just decide, I'm in an opportunity zone, so now these laws or the ways it's structured now apply to me, type of thing. So kind of walk me through, obviously most people have not heard of this. What is opportunity zones? What does it mean? What are the benefits of it, and how to navigate it?
Yeah. So the Opportunity Zone program, or Opportunity Zone incentive, was passed in the 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act, so December 2017, as part of that kind of broader tax package. And it was designed to provide an incentive for people to reinvest recent capital gains from any source, short-term or long-term gains from real estate, stock, cryptocurrency, the sale of a business, into what have been designated as opportunity zones, 8,600 census tracts around the country that met certain criteria for designation as an opportunity zone.
So to clarify that, you can move it without having to pay different penalty taxes into real estate type of scenario that you might otherwise have to pay?
Yeah.
Almost like a 1031 exchange, but not strictly just with property, right?
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
Okay.
Yep. There are a number of people who choose an opportunity zone versus a 1031, or looking at those as two options. But it is much broader than the 1031 in that it's available to any capital gain, whereas a 1031 is just limited to like-kind exchanges, real estate huge. For real estate. It is. It's really opened the aperture for people in terms of thinking about who can access the Opportunity Zone incentive. And when you look at the space where people have had significant capital gains over the last several years, there's been a historic run-up in the stock market. Cryptocurrency is a relatively new asset class that's had an incredible run. And so you've got people recognizing gains in areas where historically there wasn't any sort of tax-deferred option.
Yeah.
They were just going to be stuck paying that short-term or long-term capital gain tax immediately. And so the Opportunity Zone incentive has been attractive to people, not just on the real estate or operating business side, but for those other asset classes, because of the way it provides a chance for kind of tax-deferred investing.
And I don't think most people are aware of it, in all honesty. And as far as before we go any further into it, I mean, is there a deadline as far as when it kind of expires or something like that? Is it an indefinite scenario as far as how it's laid out with that right now?
Yeah, there are some kind of key timelines to be aware of. First, on the front end, kind of the length of the program, right? The current legislation keeps opportunity zones open to new investment until the end of 2026. So you got about 4.5 more years of time that someone could take advantage of a new investment in the program.
Okay.
Yep. Once you're invested in the Opportunity Zone program, the statute allows you to hold your Opportunity Zone investments up until 2047. The end of 2047 is kind of the current sunset of the program. So you need to sell your Opportunity Zone assets, take advantage of that tax-free exit on the back end by that 2047 period. I know I just said tax-free exit. That's a piece of the program we haven't really talked about yet, but if it's helpful, we can kind of go through some of those primary benefits for an investment and opportunity zones.
So define what the opportunity zones are, as far as why did they create these zones? How do they find out about zones? And before we kind of talk about that part of it.
Yeah, perfect. So kind of going back to the start of the program, right? 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act gave each state's governor kind of a task or an opportunity, an ability to designate up to 25% of the state's low-income census tracts as quote-unquote opportunity zones. And so each state went through their own process and kind of a different process state by state. Some governors just chose through their own office. Most governors involved kind of state and local governments. Had the mayors and the city councils involved in nominating.
Which is probably super complicated for Kentucky with the amount of small towns and counties we have, with being I think the second largest state as far as number of counties or something like that.
Yeah, I think that probably did add to the complexity. But I know that our state government was intentional at getting local input involved and trying to get kind of some boots on the ground to help identify areas that were eligible, the opportunity zones, but because only a quarter of the low-income census tracts could be, what are the areas that if we make them an opportunity zone are likely to see investment, are going to benefit from the program, because being an opportunity zone doesn't do anything for you unless there's enough going on in the area that people feel comfortable, creating new businesses or doing real estate investments in the area. So
mostly focus on places that they wanted to kind of, like your other side of the business, revitalize kind of some areas of cities or other stuff like that.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. And so, the incentive resulted in 8,600 of these census tracts around the country that are designated up.
Sorry, say that again.
Zones. 8,600 census tracts around the country that are opportunity zones. In Kentucky, you'll find them, within a 30-minute drive of wherever you might live is an opportunity zone.
So they're spread out all across the state.
Spread out all across the state. There's 6 of them, here in Lexington, 19 in Louisville, and then another 100 or so scattered throughout the state in different cities and counties. Some are very rural, some are more urban kind of centers of business, but they all have that kind of requirement in common. They had to be a lower income census tract.
Where's the easy place to find out where those opportunity zones are in Kentucky?
Yeah, so if you only want to know where they are in the state has a good opportunity zone resource, kyoz.org. I've got a map on my website, ozconsultinggroup.com, that you can zoom in on the state, on a city, on a specific property address, look in other parts of the country, and find where those OZs are located.
Okay. So switching back to the other side of things, obviously there's a lot of tax side of things involved with that and so forth. So start expanding upon that, more details as far as why it's such a great opportunity when, the shoe fits as far as somebody wanting to look into this and what you have to do on the front end. Obviously, there's some things on the front end.
Yeah. So I mentioned the Opportunity Zone incentive is designed to drive recent capital gains into these areas, right? So the idea of the program was there was somewhere around $10 trillion of unrealized capital gains kind of floating around in the economy. And the thought in Congress was if we could get people to realize some of those gains and then move some of that capital into these areas, these opportunity zones that needed reinvestment, hopefully we could create a scenario where we create cycles of success in areas that hadn't experienced that before, create new jobs, create better real estate, and help rise the level of opportunity for the people living there. And so the incentive starts with a capital gain, again, a capital gain from any source, long or short term. And the investor, the person who realized that capital gain, has 180 days from the date they realized the gain, the date they sold the asset.
So to hit pause on that, baby steps here. We're moving capital gains. We're moving it into some kind of 1031 type of structure, third-party middleman scenario first?
Yeah, so there's no middleman in this situation. You can, we're sitting here on, March 8th. You can today look back 180 days and say, hey, in late October of 2021, I sold a stock. It generated a capital gain. You may not even have that exact pot of money somewhere, right?
Yeah.
You might have used that to buy your next rental property, but it was
on
a $10,000 gain.
Yeah.
You've got $10,000 you've got access to. You put that money into what's called an opportunity fund, which is really just a new LLC. It's taxed as a partnership and has some special language in its operating agreement that commits to investing in qualified opportunity zone property. You move that money into an opportunity fund, and you get to defer that amount of capital gain, whatever you placed in the opportunity fund within 180 days of the gain from your 2021 or 2022 tax return. So on the front end, it starts with that deferral. You place the money in the opportunity fund. The amount of recent gain you put in the fund is deferred from your current year tax return. So you would have paid tax on it in 2021, but that gets wiped off your return. So you get to invest with pre-tax dollars, the same sort of benefit you'd see like in a 401k plan on the front end. That deferral lasts until the end of 2026. So the first benefit, deferral of capital gain until the end of 2026. That $10,000 you wiped off your 2021 return comes back on your 2026 return. If it was a long-term gain, it's taxed as a long-term gain. If it was a short-term gain, it's taxed as a short-term gain. So it keeps that character of gain. But you will have a tax bill due in 2026 on that deferred gain. It's not a deferral for an indefinite period the way a 1031 exchange is. So that's one difference.
Almost thinking of it like loaning money that you are going to have to owe the government to be able to reinvest into something for a period of time and then paying it back to what's owed to government, because obviously they always get what they're going to be owed.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. It's like an interest-free loan from the IRS. You get to keep that amount you would have paid them in tax, use it for the next 5 years in the opportunity zone space, hopefully generate a return on that, and then pay them tax in 2026. And so that's a compelling benefit. A number of people are coming to the opportunity zones because of that front-end tax deferral. But I think the more powerful benefit is on the back end. That money you put in your opportunity fund, you can use to buy real estate, to create new operating businesses. You can invest in a deal that you're directly involved in. We call this kind of a self-directed or captive opportunity fund. Or you can invest as a limited partner in a deal or development somebody else is doing, kind of like a real estate syndication, but they're investing specifically in opportunities on property. And so you get the OZ tax benefits layered on top of it. And if you hold your opportunities on investment for 10 years or longer, when you sell it on the back end, that back end sale proceed is entirely tax free. So if that $10,000 you invest,
insert
becomes
some kind of audio background noise here of like, wait, say that again, type of thing. So like, say that last part again, in case you might miss that part, because that's obviously the biggest caveat to this whole thing of why there's such a draw to it. So on the back
it's
end,
that back end benefit that's the most attractive. And so you hold your opportunity zone investments, the real estate, the operating businesses, that LP syndication you invested in for 10 years or longer. And when you sell it, it's entirely tax free on the back end.
10 years or longer up to that.
Up to that 2047.
Okay. I was just making sure I'm putting all the pieces together there. Sure.
That's right. Yeah. The way it's currently written, if you held it past 2047, you'd lose that tax-free sale. You can keep holding it, but you probably wouldn't want to. You'd want to sell it by then.
Gotcha. Okay. There's a lot of stuff there, and I assume that's why it's good to talk to somebody like you, where obviously the key is to speak to that again. You don't necessarily want to just go to like illegalzoom.com or something like that. Obviously there's some, like you said, language and other things in that respect. So talk a little bit about just setting that up. You have to kind of decide to set it up that way from the beginning.
Yeah, that's right. And I've talked to a number of clients, kind of initial consultations, which I do for free of charge for folks to help them understand the incentive, find out if it's a good fit for them or not, see whether I'm the right person to assist them. Who've got some misconceptions. They think, hey, just the fact that they own a property in the opportunity zone, they think is going to give them that OZ benefit, and that's not the case. Or the fact that their business is located in an opportunity zone, like, hey, if I sell my business in 10 years, that'll be tax-free. And that could be the case if we structure it right, but if they don't do the right structuring steps on the front end, they're going to be disappointed 10 years from now. And so I try to help people with understanding that. But the first step in that structuring is creating a qualified opportunity fund. And again, it's got to be a partnership or corporation. For most folks, a simple kind of two-person partnership can even be a husband and wife, tends to be the cleanest way to structure that. And that partnership has to have special language in its operating agreement that commits to being a qualified opportunity fund, investing at least 90% of the fund's assets in opportunity zone property, real estate or businesses that are operating out of these 8,600 opportunity zones. And then you've got to fund that opportunity fund with recent capital gain. And so the way the OZ incentive is structured, if you've got money that you earned from your W-2 job and you want to put it in an opportunity zone, you're allowed to do it, but you don't get any of the tax benefits. So there's some deals that are compelling enough that people are investing both with capital gain and with non-eligible dollars. But for the most part,
so you can use other funds that are not necessarily just from.
You could, but say you put $10,000 of capital gain, you put $10,000 of other money in there, both as equity contributions. You've got half your investment that gets the OZ benefit and half that doesn't. So 10 years from now when you sell, you'll have a tax bill on half of your investment. and you get the tax-free treatment on the other half. So I try to help clients with only having recent capital gain as their opportunity fund equity investment.
Yeah.
But you're allowed to have as much debt in your opportunity fund mix as you like. And so in that scenario where a client has other cash they want to contribute to the strategy, they invest their opportunity fund equity just from their capital gain, and then they make a loan to the company of the other cash that they've got.
Okay.
Use that loan for the acquisition or improvement of the properties that they're buying in the opportunity zone space. Get some bank debt on the back end, pay off that related party note, but kind of use that for initial seed capital. But that way we protect their OZ benefit. We don't dilute it with non-OZ equity by just having the capital gain as the equity in the stack.
And that's why I will plug people who contact Scott for that kind of thing. He's not like with a giant firm type of thing. He's more hands-on with you, which is why it's going to be great. And we'll plug his stuff here shortly at the end of the podcast here. Any kind of interesting stories you've had in the house flipping or real estate owning game? I'm sure everyone always has stories type of thing, obviously. So what's yours?
Yeah, man.
What sticks out to you?
A few. One that sticks out to me was that property on Pinmilcon Park we talked about early on. I talked about kind of trying to learn some things and doing a lot by hand. And I remember I had tenants moving in. I think it was the 1st of September, and I'd started my first semester at UK. I was in Economics 201 with Gail Hoyt, fantastic professor there, and I fell asleep in class the second week, and she knew I was pledging a fraternity, and I'd probably seen enough kids that she was worried that maybe they're not letting us sleep at night or hazing us hard or something like that, and so she pulled me aside after class and said, "Hey, Scott, you're falling asleep in class. What's going on?" And I'd been up till 2 a.m. the night before trying to sand and restain the steps in this rental property because the tenants were moving in the next day, and I had no idea what I was doing. And that was why I was falling asleep. It wasn't because of anything that the fraternity was doing. But, it's fun thinking back on kind of the sweat equity that went into that, the lessons that were learned. And, I see a lot of people sitting on the sidelines in the real estate game, spend a lot of time kind of analyzing properties, building files, doing underwriting, looking at deals, but not taking the leap because they're waiting for that perfect property, or they feel like they have to know everything before they dive in. And for me, what I learned on that one was, and the advice Dad gave me is, hey, this may suck. Like, you may do a terrible job. You might go bankrupt on this, but you'll be a 19-year-old kid who's in the same place as all the other 19-year-old kids with nothing, but you'll have a whole kind of, series of experiences that you'll be able to build on. And that property turned out well. It was a great investment, but I learned a lot on it. And so what I encourage people when they're thinking about kind of getting in the real estate game is don't feel like you got to hit a home run in your first at bat. Be comfortable hitting a single and know that if you strike out, it's the sort of game you get at least 3 outs in.
Yes.
And so
to that point, me and my business partner abused that when we were trying to get into the real estate business, is that realizing we don't need a home run. So the first part of knowing your numbers is key for sure.
Yeah.
But also not being afraid to, you still got to get on base and not thinking that you have to have a home run. So we're like, our whole mindset over, the last couple of months has just been, all right, we just need a single, just get on base. Yep. And definitely seemed, in all honesty, it definitely seemed like getting on base was the hardest part, which I think most batters obviously will tell you. But once you're on base, now there's opportunities to move up and a lot more freedom, it seemed like. Especially with the banks or the local relationships, it seems like that, they kind of start trusting you, knowing what you're doing. But when you have nothing to stand on and you're still swinging for the fences at home plate here, to continue with the baseball reference. So, I appreciate that point there.
Yeah, I think you've got at least 6 singles, maybe a double or 2 in the mix lined up here, right? So
it might be a double. I don't know. Which is crazy to think about for sure. You had mentioned in the past one of the things as far as you had a liability insurance covered, kind of legal and attorney fees on an issue with a tenant one time. Can you tell me a little bit more about that story?
Yeah. So
since I'm an insurance person, but it's also very important, obviously.
It is, yeah. So I mentioned we're self-managing our properties now. That's been key to our strategy. But we had a couple of properties that were under a property manager's coverage, kind of that we'd kept there after Audrey and I returned from being overseas. And so this was one of those. It was a townhouse over off of kind of Man of War near Hamburg. And we received a notice that the tenant filed a lawsuit, with one of those guys who's got a, 1-800 number, runs a lot of radio ads, claiming that they'd slipped and fell on some air conditioning condensate in our unit and had some kind of permanent disabilities from that. And Chris and I had a call with each other. Like, neither of us really knew how to proceed. I'm an attorney, but not a torts or liability attorney, and And so we were like, well, I guess we just need to let our insurance company know as a first step. And
Yeah.
and so we did that. And really that was kind of the last thing that we had to do.
Yeah.
We let our insurance company know, and they jumped in and took care of it from there. They had a whole legal team that was used to dealing with these sorts of cases. They were able to kind of get far enough in the discovery to understand whether there was much merit to the case, where kind of the chinks in the claims that the tenant was making were. For example, there wasn't an AC unit that could have leaked condensate where she was claiming to have fallen, and then reach a point in the litigation like, hey, it's worth us paying, whatever, $2,000 or $3,000, not us as in me, us as in the insurance company, to make this claim go away. And so they settled for, what they called, less than the cost of litigation type of claim. But there was just a lot of peace of mind that Chris and Audrey and Sarah and I all had in knowing that this wasn't something we needed to be losing any sleep about. We didn't need to be figuring out who the right attorney to represent us in this scenario was, or spending time, investigating the claims. We could trust our insurance company to handle that.
And that's usually the goal. I mean, having a good insurance company, but also, for the ideal situation scenario is like that as a insurance broker, which is, I'm here to advise on a lot of the stuff, but then when an insurance claim scenario type thing comes around, trusting that the carrier itself, usually, as long as they're a good carrier, is going to, do what they need to do as far as in the best interest. In that case, it was obviously a false claim, so they deal with that all the time. If it's an actually true claim, they'll settle and get that taken care of, and it's what it is, and hopefully from there, they kind of take everything, and you or I don't really have to get involved much at that point. We're always here as brokers to kind of, if things aren't going well or we need some kind of middle man or some questions are asked, we're here to get back involved if we need to. But, I appreciate that story. It's those things that like that where you realize, oh, that's why we have this, or that's why it's here, kind of a scenario, because it's easy to forget about or think, it's not really even worth it. So
yeah, no, true.
What are some of your professional or personal goals that you're working on for the new year?
I think I've heard you talk about this with some other podcast guests, so it feels like it's true for other people kind of at our age and stage of life. We just had our fourth kid, though, right, in our mid-30s, so finding balance in life, figuring out what the right kind of mix of time and mental energy that I need to be dedicating and committing to work is, to take good care of my clients and of our tenants, and to hit our goals on that side, but also figuring out how to detach from that and be present and focused in the time that I get with my family. And so, I think self-employment provides some phenomenal benefits on that side. It gives you a lot more autonomy in making those choices, but you're also then responsible for making them, right? You don't get to just, leave work at work when you leave at 5 or 6 o'clock, and so that comes with some challenges. And then I think the other thing that is kind of a personal goal is trying to just think about this concept of a finish line, which is something that I've read about in a few different books. I think more recently, Living a Rich Life was a book that I read that was really impactful. And just this concept that if you decide at a younger age kind of what would be enough, what you need to feel kind of satisfaction, your family's taken care of, you've got the things that you all will enjoy doing together, but you can kind of put a number on that. It helps protect from getting into a cycle where you just need more and more and more. And I've had the benefit of dealing with clients who've been incredibly successful in my opportunity zone space. People who have a significant capital gain are often folks who've built great businesses or invested really well in different areas. And I've seen some who've struck that balance really nicely. And I've seen others who maybe didn't spend as much time on that. And it seems like they're stuck in a mode where they're just working to get more and more. And on the outside, it's not clear kind of what more is going to do for them. And so trying to think about
that's a good point, though. The balance being like, obviously people have goals. We've talked about having goals. And if you don't have goals, obviously, it's like you don't know where you're going. But attaching a finish line kind of thing to the goals, that's, I think, something everyone really talks about much, for sure. It keeps you focused. I like that.
Thanks.
What's one of your favorite trips you all been on?
Man, I love to travel. It's one of the kind of hobbies that my family and I have, and I particularly love to travel when it's free. And so one of the things I spend a lot of time on is kind of trying to game the points and mile system, find ways to earn extra credit card points or airline or hotel points or miles, and take some trips at no cost. And so I think the one that stands out was a trip my wife and I took, just the two of us. It's about 3 years ago. Entirely free on points. We flew first class in Qatar Airways to the Maldives.
Okay.
And stayed entirely free at the Conrad.
One of the like overwater type of things.
Overwater villa, and food was crazy expensive because there's not the whole hotel was its own island.
Did you have to take like a little boat over to it?
You did. You had to get there, and it was a seaplane actually at this particular place. So we spent money on the seaplane ride. We spent plenty of money on the food, but the getting there, the lodging was entirely
so it was more of a
free,
normal vacation cost, but at a very
kind of a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And so, I spent several years worth of points on that one trip. But points are not worth anything unless you use them, and so it's good to kind of liquidate the account on something cool, and then have an incentive to start accumulating them again.
Last couple here. Your favorite concert that you've all been to?
Yeah. So. In a previous life, one of my jobs was I was an attorney in the military, and we were stationed over in Vicenza, Italy. And there was an Adele concert at a Roman amphitheater in Verona that my wife and I and one of our other good friends went to together. And it was amazing. So open air, outdoor, in this 1,000-year-old amphitheater.
That's incredible.
And Adele's phenomenal. And
is there a couple of those outdoor ones over in Europe? Like I think I've seen some with some of those a cappella groups and so forth. But that would you don't really get that here in America. Some kind of outdoor.
There's a place called the Hollywood Bowl in California. We lived in San Francisco for a few years, and
maybe Red Rocks is kind of our version of that as well in some respects. But interesting. Favorite date night restaurant?
We love OBC, one of the BHG restaurants over on Lansdowne.
Can't complain about that one at all. And then favorite things to do about Kentucky, or favorite things to do in Kentucky or about Kentucky?
I think my favorite day in Kentucky is that fall day where Keeneland is in session and there's a home football game. And so the Keeneland UK football double is awesome. So go and enjoy the day at the races, tailgate with some friends, catch a game.
I always say October in Lexington especially is so special. I love it. I always can't wait for October. Jacket weather, bonfires, Keeneland, football, I'm
with you.
Last question, wrapping up here. If somebody wants to get in touch with you to kind of learn more about the opportunity zones or structuring their their deals or getting into the sort of legal side of things or advice, how can we get in touch with you about that?
Yeah. So again, my website is ozconsultinggroup.com. My email address is scott@opportunityzoneconsultinggroup.com.
So website's OZ Consulting Group. And the emails, just making sure here, is Opportunity Zone Consulting Group.
You can get to the website, type it in the full Opportunity Zone Consulting Group as well.
Nice. Very good. Thanks for listening, guys. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast. We'll see you back next week for another episode of the Keys to the Commonwealth podcast. Scott, thanks for your time today. I appreciate you joining us on the show.
Hey, really enjoyed it. Thanks, Landry.
To learn more about this podcast, visit our page at keystothecommonwealth.com. To connect with Landry regarding insuring your investment portfolio, email landry@novainsuranceGroup.com or call 859-687-2004.